The Las Vegas Raiders have officially hired Pete Carroll as their new head coach, and today we're diving into what this move means for the team. I'm really excited about this hire. Pete Carroll is an experienced and successful coach, and bringing him in is a big step for the Raiders, especially when the team has been struggling to find direction on offense. I think this could be exactly what they need. Adam Schefter reported that the Raiders and Carroll have agreed on a 3-year deal, with a fourth-year option, so this could potentially be a 4-year commitment. This brings a lot of stability to the team, which is something the Raiders have needed for a while. When you look at Pete Carroll's track record, it's clear he knows how to build a winning team. He came into the NFL with the Seattle Seahawks, and while they had a tough start, things really turned around once they brought in Russell Wilson. By year 3, they were in the playoffs, and by year 4, they were winning the Super Bowl. For several years, Carroll had the #1 defense in the NFL, which is not an easy feat. One thing that stands out about Carroll is his ability to find great coaches and coordinators to work with him. He's hired some top-tier talent, including Dan Quinn, Robert Saleh, Lane Kiffin, and Steve Sarkisian. These are all coaches who have gone on to have success in their own careers. This shows that Carroll knows how to build a strong coaching staff, which is vital for any team looking to succeed. For the Raiders, this hire feels like a step in the right direction. With Carroll at the helm, there's a real opportunity to turn things around and find success, something the team hasn't had much of in the past 2 decades. The Raiders have struggled for the past 20 years, failing to win a playoff game and only making the playoffs a few times. But with Pete Carroll now at the helm, things are looking up. Over the next 4 to 5 years, there's a real chance the Raiders will be competing at a high level and becoming a solid football team. In fact, with Carroll in charge, it's likely that in the next 2 to 3 years, the team will make the playoffs and play meaningful games in December and January, something the Raiders haven't experienced much lately. This is what excites me the most about Carroll's hire. He's proven to be a winner and has a track record of turning struggling teams around. Let's not forget, he's a Super Bowl winning coach. Some people are concerned because Carroll is 73 years old, making him one of the oldest coaches in the NFL. But honestly, age isn't everything. Carroll is still sharp and showed last season that he's more than capable of coaching at a high level. He helped turn Geno Smith's career around, which speaks to his ability to develop quarterbacks and make the most of what he's given. This is important for the Raiders, who are in need of a solid quarterback. In fact, other candidates like Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen passed on the Raiders' job specifically because of the uncertainty at quarterback. But with Pete Carroll, the hope is that he can solve that issue and bring stability to the team. One of the biggest issues the Raiders have faced in recent years is the lack of a solid quarterback. Last year, when the team hired Antonio Pierce, many available coordinators didn't want to join because they were concerned about the quarterback situation. This year, the same problem persists, with coaches hesitant to take on the job due to the uncertainty at the quarterback position. However, for someone like Pete Carroll, this might not be a major issue. He might be confident in his ability to find and develop a quarterback, which is one of the reasons he's so appealing to the Raiders. Carroll has a history of turning around quarterbacks that other teams may have given up on. He helped players like Geno Smith and Russell Wilson have successful careers, proving that he has a knack for working with QBs who haven't necessarily had a lot of success before. Some people might credit Dave Canales, the current head coach of the Carolina Panthers, for helping Geno Smith, but I believe the real credit goes to Carroll. As a head coach and play caller, he's the one who ultimately makes the biggest impact on a quarterback's development. Carroll's ability to bring in a quarterback like Geno Smith, who was written off by most teams, and turn him into a successful starter shows that he has the talent and expertise to work with quarterbacks in need of guidance. This gives hope to the Raiders that Carroll could find and mold a quarterback to lead the team into the future. Another thing we need to remember about Pete Carroll is that he's a defensive-minded coach. He led the Seattle Seahawks to have the #1 defense for several years, building the famous Legion of Boom. For 4 straight years, his defense was at the top, and even in the years before and after that, the Seahawks still had a top 10 defense. While the defense wasn't as dominant in recent years, that's because Seattle shifted its focus more towards offense. They invested heavily in offensive players and made big contracts to strengthen that side of the ball. As a result, the offense started carrying the team, with Geno Smith playing a key role in their success. For the Raiders, Carroll's defensive expertise could be a game changer. He could bring a solid defensive foundation to the team, which is something the Raiders have lacked for years. On top of that, Carroll has a proven ability to work with quarterbacks, whether they're well-known or underdogs. He might be able to take players like Jameis Winston, Justin Fields, Gardner Minshew, or Aiden McConnell and help them cut down on mistakes and develop into solid starters. When it comes to trusting a coach to make this work, it's hard to find someone more reliable than Pete Carroll. He has a knack for identifying talent, and he's not afraid to bring in new faces, like former players or lesser-known coaches, and mold them into successful contributors. If anyone can turn this team around, it's Carroll, combining his defensive background with his ability to work with quarterbacks and build a strong team culture. One of the most exciting things about Pete Carroll is his ability to build a winning program. No matter who the next quarterback is for the Raiders, Carroll has the experience and leadership to help develop that player and turn the team into a contender. For me, that's the most exciting part of this hire. Carroll has proven time and time again that he knows how to succeed, and that's exactly what the Raiders need after 20 years of inconsistency and lack of success. Some people may argue that hiring Carroll is a bad move, but I strongly disagree. Carroll has a proven track record of winning, and at this point, the Raiders need a coach who can bring stability and build a culture of success. Even if the team struggles in the first couple of years, I believe Carroll will have the time and support to turn things around in the long run. Unlike the past few seasons, where the Raiders have been quick to fire coaches, Carroll will likely be given the opportunity to build something solid over time. There's also a shift happening within the Raiders organization. With the appointment of John Spytek as the general manager, the team seems committed to creating consistency and continuity moving forward. Spytek has spoken in the past about the importance of having a head coach, scouting staff, and front office in place for the long term. This approach will give the team the stability it needs to finally break the cycle of constant turnover. With Carroll as head coach and Spytek in charge of the roster, the Raiders have a real chance to build something lasting. For the Raiders, one thing we've been missing for a long time is consistency, and Pete Carroll is exactly the kind of coach who can bring that. With him leading the team, we can finally get some stability on the coaching side. On top of that, with John Spytek and Tom Brady at the top of the front office, there's hope that we can create the same kind of stability and consistency in that area as well. One of the biggest tasks ahead for the Raiders is getting the quarterback situation right, but that's not the only position that needs attention. Pete Carroll will need to figure out the quarterback position, but the team will also have to strengthen the running back position and improve the offensive line. These are key areas that will play a big role in the team's success moving forward. Thankfully, the Raiders' defense is already in a pretty solid spot. With players like Max Crosby and Christian Barmore, we have some strong pieces to build around. I trust Carroll to make the necessary adjustments and get the defense where it needs to be. Where the Raiders do need to improve, though, is at wide receiver. Pete Carroll has a history of drafting wide receivers early, like he did with DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I believe he'll want to continue that trend with the Raiders. The team already has a solid number 2 receiver in Jacoby Myers and a good slot guy in Hunter Renfrow, but they need a true number 1 wide receiver to take the offense to the next level. Finding that key piece will be crucial for the Raiders' offense under Carroll's leadership. The Raiders do have some promising offensive pieces in place, with Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer adding a lot of potential to the offense. However, the team still needs a true number 1 wide receiver, and I believe that should be a top priority, especially with the 6th overall pick in the draft. While the running back position is important, I think it's easier to find a quality back in the 2nd or 3rd round, as Pete Carroll has shown in the past. Over the last few years, Carroll has successfully drafted running backs in the mid-rounds, like in the 3rd and 2nd rounds, so the Raiders should be able to find a solid running back without using a high pick. That being said, one area of concern is the offensive line. In Seattle, Pete Carroll didn't prioritize investing heavily in the offensive line, and it showed. While the Seahawks had a dominant offensive line a few years ago, injuries and a lack of investment in the position have caused it to decline. The Seahawks' offensive line fell apart in recent years, and I worry the Raiders might follow a similar approach under Carroll. The offensive line will be crucial for the Raiders' success, and they'll need to make sure they're investing in the right pieces to protect the quarterback and give the offense a solid foundation. If the team can address this issue, along with adding a number 1 wide receiver, the offense will have the potential to take a major step forward. I disagree with the notion that the Raiders have a good offensive line. While there are some solid pieces, there's still a lot of work to be done. The right tackle position is uncertain, and we're not sure if DJ Fluker is the long-term answer there. On top of that, The team needs to bring in at least one guard this year to strengthen the line. We need some players who can be physical and dominate up front. A guy like Paris Johnson could be a good addition, but the Raiders really need a bully at guard, someone who can push the line forward and create space for the offense. Hopefully, Pete Carroll can help address this through the draft. John Spytek, as I mentioned in the video yesterday, values bigger players, and that's something we've seen in his past drafts. The center he drafted was 6 feet 5 inches, and the guard they selected was 6 feet 4 inches, so there's a focus on size and strength. With Pete Carroll's guidance, hopefully, the Raiders can get the right pieces in place to strengthen their offensive line. Overall, I like the hire of Pete Carroll. I know there will be critics, especially given his age and the fact that he's not an offensive play caller. But we have to remember that not all coaching candidates are ideal fits. For example, back in 2020 to 2021, there were a couple of great coaches in the hiring process, like Dan Campbell and Nick Sirianni, who both turned down the Bears' head coach job. The reason? They didn't see a clear direction or a strong quarterback, and the Bears had a reputation for firing coaches every couple of years. This highlights just how important it is to have stability and a clear plan, something Pete Carroll can bring to the Raiders. The Bears made the decision to stick with Justin Fields and build the team around him. Even though they didn't necessarily view him as an elite quarterback, they chose to focus on building out the roster and strengthening the team over the next few years. Under their general manager, Ryan Poles, they started by trimming the roster, trading away players like Roquan Smith and some offensive linemen, and focusing heavily on the draft. They've done well in the first and second rounds, hitting on solid picks year after year. Now the Bears are in a much stronger position, with a young quarterback and a great head coach, and there's a real chance they'll be a playoff team for the next decade. For the Raiders, the key is to get on the right path, and Pete Carroll could be the coach to lead them there. Even if the team doesn't win a Super Bowl in the next few years, we need to ensure that by year 3 or 4 we're heading in the right direction. The hope is that by then, we'll have a quarterback in place, whether it's a rookie or a veteran in his prime, like a quarterback in his 6th or 7th year. If Carroll doesn't work out in the long run, the Raiders can still make a change while maintaining stability within the organization. At that point, the team could potentially look at younger coaching candidates like Clint Kubiak or Bobby Slowick, or even someone else who might be the next great coach to lead the team forward. The main thing for the Raiders is to establish consistency and a long-term vision. Whether it's with Pete Carroll or someone else down the road, the key is building the foundation and staying on course, just like the Bears have done in recent years. The Raiders have the potential to turn into a winning program, and I genuinely believe that Pete Carroll is the right hire to set them on that path. You guys know this, but I was never on board with Antonio Pierce as the head coach. I've said it multiple times on Twitter and made videos expressing my opinion on it. At the time, I would have preferred a guy like Jim Harbaugh, Bobby Slowick, or even Ben Johnson. Unfortunately, those coaches ended up staying with their teams, which made it clear they weren't interested in the Raiders' job. But more than them staying with their teams, I just didn't feel that Antonio Pierce was the right choice. It wasn't because I don't like him. He's a good coach with a lot of potential. The issue was he had never proven himself as a head coach. I know some people might argue that could work, but it's not always the best move. With Pete Carroll, even though he doesn't call plays either, he's proven that he can succeed without being directly involved in play calling. He's built winning cultures everywhere he's been. The same can be said for Jim Harbaugh, who doesn't call plays but has proven that he can build a winning culture. So I believe Pete Carroll can take the Raiders and get them on the right track to success. It may take some time, but I'm confident in his ability to make it happen. Thanks for watching this video, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you next time with another video.